10 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. You did 5.
I did 10.
You did 10?
Yeah.
So you're like the only family responsible?
Really? Yeah. 2 of them. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. It's good. Yeah. Good evening. Sound work? Okay. Sounds like it's good. Welcome to the Hearth. It's hard to believe, but this is our 25th Hearth in Grants Pass. That's an amazing event. You know, so many times I read things in the community or business magazines, and they talk about the power of stories. And the storytelling says, we've been doing that a long time in Grants Pass. Welcome tonight. Welcome to our online attendees as well. And we're going to have 6, well actually we do have, Melody is not able to make it tonight, so we're going to have 5 storytellers tonight. Although one person just says, well, I can talk a little bit longer. So, yeah. But a big thank you to everyone for coming. So the Hearth was started in Ashland in 2010, and Hyla and I, Hyla Lipson, were taught by Mark Yaconelli, and he's an amazing storyteller himself, and he's told stories here before. But a big thank you to the Ford Family Foundation, the Oregon Community Foundation, Bethany Presbyterian Church, Mark Yaconelli, and our amazing team of Hyla, Tom Berry, Gabby, Sylvia Marr, and myself. Tonight's topic is called the art of living. And as I was thinking about this subject, the art of living can have different meanings for each of us. And what brings meaning to one person in a positive sense of living may mean something else to somebody else that could be not so much. And there's no right or wrong way. But one definition for me that brings on the art of living is having inner peace, personal growth, and just a general well-being about myself. And with all the stresses that we face in our daily lives, finding ways to find that inner peace and happiness is so important. And so for tonight, we're going to hear some stories and music about what the art of living means to our Hearth participants tonight. So one of the things that we have with the Hearth is a featured nonprofit. And so our featured nonprofit tonight is the Southern Oregon Guild. And thank you for supporting the local nonprofit organizations. And Caitlin Dean, the managing director. And Caitlin is a vessel maker and a lover of earth-based crafts. She holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in ceramics and studies from the Maryland Institute of Art, where she thrived in community arts partnership, providing arts programming to local underserved communities. Residing in the Illinois Valley of Southern Oregon since 2019, Caitlin currently shares her passion through the arts through her work as managing director of the Southern Oregon Guild. When she's not at the Guild Gallery in Kirby, you'll find her singing in the local Illinois Valley Community Choir, swimming in the Illinois River, and practicing yoga with friends. Please help me welcome Caitlin.
Thank you, Steve, for that introduction. Hi there, I'm Caitlin Dean, the Managing Director of the Southern Oregon Guild. Thank you so much for having us be here tonight as the recipient of the donations for the Hearth. I'm going to quickly share a little bit about what we do. So the Southern Oregon Guild, of course, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to serve and support our artists and artisans here in Southern Oregon. So we serve everyone from Josephine County to a few people in Jackson County, as well as Curry County. We have currently 75 guild members, which is amazing. And these are people from all walks of life, all at different points in their artistic path. And many different people practice different kinds of art. We have people who are performing artists, literary artists and writers, painters, poets, potters, and the list goes on. And as Steve mentioned, we have a Guild Gallery and Art Center, and that's in Kirby, Oregon. So many of you have taken the Redwood Highway 199 south of here. We're right there, just after It's-a-Burl. And I invite you to come see us sometime. Our current gallery hours are 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday. And we're open if you want to come see what we're up to. We produce about 4 art exhibits a year, and so those always have their own opening celebrations that are free. And we have a little pamphlet and flyer you can take because we're having one open this Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m. And this exhibit is called The Art of Balance. And so we're curating all sorts of art all about balance right now. And then our next show will be in July, and then the one following that is going to be in October. And so we really promote what our guild members are doing. And so if you're interested in becoming a member, you can learn a little bit more about us at our table out in the lobby. In the honor of storytelling, I wanted to do something a little bit different tonight and share just a few testimonials from our guild members, because this is about personal experience in storytelling, and who better to say it than the people that we serve. And so I wanted to share we have Miri Admoni, who is a glass and jewelry artist. I'm a second-time immigrant to the USA. First time to the East and now to the West, and it has been very significant for me to find a nice and supportive community, and I did. I find you, the wonderful, talented, creative, warm people who embrace me with open arms, and I love being part of the Guild and its growth and development, and enjoy working at the gallery. Thank you, Guild community. And I'll share one more from Terry Davis, who is a longtime board member, sculptor, and musician. And he says, my friends at the Guild have given me not only permission, but encouragement to go and explore the depths of creating. It is wildly wonderful when people notice and appreciate and support this side of me and share in the relevance of art as power and life itself. So I like that one from Terry. So you're welcome to learn more about what we do, and I just wanted to thank the Hearth for hosting us tonight. I got to meet Mark Iaconelli, who many of you know, one of the founders of the Hearth community. He came in on his book tour in 2022 to host a storytelling workshop at our gallery, and I got to experience personally the firsthand of personal storytelling and how powerful it is. So I'm really grateful to be here tonight. Thank you so much.
You know, we talked a little bit about our team that puts on the Hearth, and Hyla's a big part of that. But Barb Hochberg was a storyteller here at the Hearth, and she was a big participant on our team to make things happen. And she had some amazing, funny stories to tell as well. And unfortunately, she passed away. And Hyla would like to tell just a few stories as well as remembering Barb. So, Hyla?
So Barb was my best friend. She was my plus one when I did things. We went to concerts together. We went to the plays together. We did a lot of stuff together. And so many times when I was in something like the Women's Crisis Support Team Board, she was also on the Women's Crisis Support Team Board. She was also the head of the tourism committee for the city. And at one point, Darren Fowler gave her the award of the best volunteer of the year. And Barb was a woman of few words, except when she was standing in front of the microphone here at the Hearth. And so it was really kind of cute, because Darren held up the microphone and said, Barb, so what brought you to Grants Pass? And her answer was, my car. She was an avid volunteer for many organizations, and when she heard about the Hearth, she wanted to get involved. I mean, she wanted to tell a story every single time we had the Hearth. Now, this is 25 times that she could have told 25 stories. And she was like full of stories. So her first story, and I've got this because I'm not supposed to read things, but I don't want to get the dates right. So in 2017, in April, our theme was a warning. And she talked about going to an exercise program. She joined the gym. I think you remember in town there was one that was 24/7, and you had a key and you could go in anytime you wanted to. But she was always afraid if she went in alone because she tended to fall off the treadmill. She said, I don't know why, but I never could keep up with the thing, and the person would pick me up and put me back on it, and then I would fall off again. So she finally gave up with the treadmill. I don't know if she did the bicycle or other things, but always her stories were funny. I mean, we all had this comic relief when Barb stood here. Her next story was in 2018 in October, and that was unconditional. Well, I don't know if you know this, and I don't know if you all heard this story, but she does not like cats. However, a friend of hers said, if you'll watch our cat, we'll let you drive our BMW and we'll let you stay in our penthouse. Now, Barb had a bunker car, and she was in like a one-bedroom studio, and she thought, BMW, penthouse, I could probably deal with a cat for a little while. So she went, and she didn't get along with the cat very much, and so she left the cat outside, but she would put food out for the cat. And at one point, she lost the cat. I mean, the cat just disappeared. And she's thinking, well, I could probably find another cat. They'll never know. And at one point, they called her, and they wanted the cat to talk on the phone. So she went way far back in the room and put the phone over here, and she meowed way far away, satisfied the whole thing. Well, the weird thing is, when they came back, she was panic-stricken because she thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. The cat appeared again. Her next story was in July of 2019, and our theme was going wild. Well, you have to know that Barb was not a gardener. She just wasn't. In fact, she was in Art in the Garden, a theme event that the museum has, only we called her the Ungardened Garden because her backyard was basically rocks, and Janet Higgins had made some trees out of manzanita, dead manzanita, and metal bases for Black, White, and the Blues, which is a fundraiser the museum used to have. And so there was these blue manzanita trees that were there, and then she had clay birds on the manzanita trees. And the only thing that was really live and impressive is she's got a cherry tree in the backyard, and it blooms, and it got huge, but she doesn't like cherries. So when the cherries would fall down, the birds would eat them, and then she would call her friends and say, come get the cherries. Recently, one of her neighbors brought her some tomatoes, so she was very, very, very proud of the tomatoes, but her main love was the dandelions. Now, I don't know if you know that when your neighbor has dandelions, you're not really happy about it because the little seed things blow into your yard, and that doesn't really excite you, but she thought her field of yellow was the best thing she'd ever seen, and she just let it go. Her last story for us was in July of 2023, and the theme was Some Like It Hot. Now, there was a thing that happened to her at some point during, I think, the pandemic. She didn't get COVID, but she lost her sense of taste. So she loved peppers, and she loved Tabasco sauce. And she was really concerned because she had read that Tabasco was going to be limiting because they had some loss of some product or ingredients or something. So she actually claimed that she bought an entire cupboard full of Tabasco sauce. I do know that she liked hot peppers because when we would go to Thai restaurants, she always liked to get the hot stuff. So one time we were driving, and we were trying to come up with a new theme for the Hearth because she was on the committee, actually, with us. And so we thought, it might be fun to talk about cars. So on July 18th of this year, the next theme is the cars in our life. And she would have talked about, she said she had 18 cars. I only know 2 of them. One was Jane, and she called Jane Jane because it was plain Jane. It was just a black car with no real. But Jane was magic because somehow she made it to California and back with no oil. Yeah. Her latest car was a blue kind of square boxy thing, and she called it Dory because it was blue and it took her places. So we will miss her. We're going to have a celebration of her life tomorrow at the museum from 3 to 6. So if you knew Barb and you want to talk about Barb, or you want to talk about people who knew Barb, or meet with people who knew Barb, I think it's a great time to be joyful about her because she was a joyful person. So.
Thank you, Hyla. So to start out the Hearth, we always start out with music, and Kayla Rao spent 12 years of childhood in Williams as a classically trained pianist before finally admitting to herself that she really preferred singing, writing songs, and playing the guitar. She now lives in the beautiful Illinois Valley with her partner Travis and their 3 cats, Sir Prince, Jolene, and Cassie. When Kayla is working on new material, she often seeks creative input from Travis and other people who love her. This does not include the cats, who tend to leave the room anytime she pulls out her guitar. So please help me welcome Kayla singing Roots.
Thank you, Steve. Well, I'm so thrilled that I accidentally picked this occasion. I have pregnancy brain really bad, so excuse me if I forget my lyrics in the middle of the song. I'm so thrilled that I chose tonight because of the Guild being the beneficiary, as I too am a member of the Southern Oregon Guild, and I have many friends in the audience tonight from that organization. The art of living to me sometimes comes down to the thing to do. I had a good friend many years ago who told me, Kayla, you worry too much about what the right and the wrong thing to do is. Just do the thing to do, which was kind of a shattering for me, being raised very conservatively. And so I wrote this song for my partner after we'd been together for about a year and a half, and we were at a crux point where I was ready to move forward, and he needed to let go of some things so that we could do the thing to do and put down some roots together. So thank you for being here tonight. This is Roots. Let go of your fears. Let go of your fears. I know you're feeling scared in that little boy dark place. Hang on, imagine us dancing forward in our own way. The water holds more than shadows. I know it's cold, but let's swim past the shallows. I wanna do this with you. Wanna put down roots. I'm done with running. A dozen moves is enough to convince me that roots are better for me. And I wanna grow them with you. Let go of your fears. Let go of your fears. What's got you so down, my love, when you're worth your weight in gold? I'm here to pick you up. My hand is yours to hold. Handsome prince, you're my good fella. Give us a chance. I'm your Cinderella. That part gets me. I wanna do this with you. Wanna put down roots. I'm done with running. A dozen moves is enough to convince me that roots are better for me. And I
Our first storyteller is Georgia Churchill, and Georgia's been a professional teller of oral traditional tales for well over 40 years. For 22 of these years, she was a resident storyteller at a K through 5 school in Sebastopol, California, about 70 miles north of San Francisco. She and her sculptor husband Charles moved to Southern Oregon in 2020, where he has since fallen in love with the mountains, forests, and flowing waters. On Wednesday, she tells the old tales at Dome School in Tacoma and freelances wherever needed. Please help me welcome Georgia, born to be a bard as a storyteller.
Thank you. A bit creaky, huh? 50 years ago, when I was 31 years old, my life crumbled around my ankles. I asked myself, if I could do anything in the whole world without worrying about money, what would I do? And 10 minutes later, by the kitchen clock, the answer popped into my head. I wanted to read to people. Well, when you get an answer to a question like that, you have to do something. So I went immediately to the Yellow Pages. You all know what Yellow Pages are? The first radio station listed was KBBF, a bilingual PBS station, who said that they would be happy to have a volunteer record stories that they would air then on Saturday in a children's program they were trying to put together. But I would have to provide the Spanish to any of the stories that I chose to read. And I was lucky enough to live in a county that had the most marvelous library system, and in the children's section, I found enough stories that were both in Spanish and English. One day, I went to the studio to pre-record a story about a rabbit who went underwater because he wanted to know what the underwater creature did. When I came up from that story, I saw the whole staff of 8 people sitting in a semicircle around the recording booth listening to the story. And that pleased me because it meant that I did a good job. And when I think about it, I've been doing that my whole life. As the oldest of 4 sisters, I used to sit my cute little sisters on the couch with their legs sticking straight out and smiles on their faces, and I would put a sheet across the arched doorway of the living room and put on One Sister Plays, popping behind the sheet when I needed to change characters. And when I was 19, our mother became ill, and I went back home to take care of the family, and that summer, my sisters and I sat down by a shady stream and we read Robin Hood, and we all met A.A. Milne. The first time for me, so nice to meet Eeyore and Tigger. Well, a teacher heard the KBBF Saturday morning children's program and heard the story that I had recorded for that Saturday and invited me to tell stories, or no, to read stories in her classroom. But see, I didn't want to have my nose in a book when I had real live people in front of me. I wanted to look at their faces and see their eyes. But when I was born, I was given a book of Eskimo oral tradition tales that were written down and illustrated by a young Eskimo man who was in an Alaskan hospital. Now, this was in the late 1930s, probably, because I was born in 42. So he was in an Alaskan hospital enduring a long recuperation from a very severely broken leg, and the nurses would bring him paper, pens, ink, and a little glass of water with a little brush in it. And he made the most brilliant illustrations showing the way the old Eskimo people looked and the way they dressed, and the stories were so strange. So I knew that they were meant to be told, and I went home and I learned my first oral tradition tale. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, long before any European ancestored people moved to the northern part of Alaska so close to the North Pole, there lived a young Eskimo man who had for a companion a human head. You might think that a head is a strange companion for a young man to have, but this head was alive and could talk. Now, during the long, cold, dark winter months, the people of the village would dance in the Kosgi, the biggest building in the village. And the Eskimo people of the time didn't move their feet when they danced. They just moved their bodies in rhythm to the drum or the hollow bird bone flutes or whistles and the chanting. And because all of their buildings were small, packed ice, snow, found wood. But the two companions decided to go dance at the Kosgi, and they had a wonderful time. But the young man got tired, and he said, "I'd like to go home." And the head said, "No, I want to stay." "But you can't go home by yourself through the village. The village dogs would eat you."
"No, I'll say, 'Kua, kua,' and they'll all run away."
So the young man went home alone. And as soon as the head was by himself, he looked, and when no one was watching, he rolled out the Kosgi door and down the snowy path to an igloo of a young woman who had said that she would never marry anyone. He rolled into her igloo so quietly. But she heard him. She jumped out of bed, grabbed him by the hair, whirled him above her head, and threw him out across the igloo door. And he sailed through the air. He didn't make a sound, and he didn't touch the ground, but sailed until he landed thump outside of his own igloo. He rolled in. The young man woke up and said, "How did you get home past the village dogs?"
"Oh, I just rolled home,"
he said. And he bounced into bed, which was a ice platform with furs on it. The second night, the two companions again went to dance at the Kosgi, but as before, the young man got tired and wanted to go home, and the head wanted to stay. "But you can't go home by yourself through the village. The village dogs would eat you."
"No, I'll say, 'Kua, kua,' and they'll all run away."
So the young man went home alone, and as soon as he was gone, the head looked all around. And when no one was watching, he rolled out the Kosgi door and down the snowy path to the igloo of that young woman. He rolled in as quietly as a mouse. But she heard him. She jumped out of bed, grabbed him by the hair, whirled him above her head, and threw him out the igloo door. The third night, the same things happened. The two companions went to dance at the Kosgi. The young man went home alone, and as soon as he was gone, the head looked all around, and when no one was watching, he rolled out the Kosgi door and down the snowy path to the igloo of that young woman. He rolled in so quietly. But she heard him. Only, instead of throwing him out, she decided that she may as well marry him and end this nuisance. And so the head was very well married in spite of his seeming difficulties. And shortly after the marriage, he rolled up to his young wife and said, "Tie a rope around my hair and throw me out across the tundra, and you'll see that I can hunt as well as do other things." She got a rope made out of thin strands of leather, braided, and tied it to her husband's hair and whirled him above her head and threw him out across the tundra. And before long, she was surprised and delighted to see him come rolling back with a fine, fat caribou. She told the news to her aged parents, and they all were glad. And after that, she threw her husband out across the tundra every day. Their storage shed was full of furs and meat. Why, they were rich. Now, one day, she got the longest rope she could find, tied it to her husband's hair, went out to the tundra away from any buildings, and whirled him above her head and threw him out across the tundra, and he sailed through the air. He didn't make a sound, and he didn't touch the ground, but sailed over the tundra and then over the mountains. And he was never seen again. An Eskimo oral tradition tale.
Thank you, Georgia. Melody was not able to make it tonight due to a personal emergency that came up, and so our next storyteller is John Frohlmeyer. With degrees from Stanford, Chicago, and Oregon in American history, ethics, and law, John Frohlmeyer's views on freedom of speech and public funding of the arts has become well known during the first Bush administration when he was chairman of the National Endowment of the Arts. That national debate over obscenity, censorship, and freedom of speech is recounted in his book, Leaving Town Alive, Confessions of an Art Warrior. A frequent commentator on public radio, John has written a trilogy of books on sports and philosophy, including Socrates the Rower, Carrying the Clubs, What Golf Teaches Us About Ethics and Skiing, and The Poetry of Snow. His novels in the Lara Cole Adventure series are Blood and Bath, followed by The Dangerous Illusion of Art. Lyrics for Laura, third in the series, is expected this summer. Please help me welcome John Frohlmeyer, the title Into the Teeth of the Winter.
A wonderful PBS special called Yellowstone in Winter was the beginning of it. It showed our greatest national park with this lumpy, beautiful, white, pristine snow. It showed the geysers shooting up out of the icy ground. It showed the bison swinging their shaggy heads to clear the snow away to get the grass underneath. And we were smitten. That is, my then wife Leah and my two sons, who at that time were 11 and 13 years old. It had been our tradition to go skiing the week before Christmas. We always did that, and we always looked forward to it. But the bugaboo in all of this was those expletive deleted snow chains that you had to put on your car. Just think of how much fun it was to lie in the icy snow, or even worse, the slush, and bust your knuckles on the chain, and to get it on finally, and you go about 10 miles, and then it wraps itself around the axle of your car. But one morning I was sitting early reading the Oregonian, that used to be a newspaper, and I saw that a Toyota dealer across town was having a lost leader sale of only one, 1983 Toyota Tercel four-wheel drive. And I got my clothes on and I rushed across town and I bought it without even sitting in it or driving it. And I just beat a guy who came in his pajamas. So we had the vehicle to go to Yellowstone. And I got the car home and I found that it was impossibly small. But there we were. So we put 4 pairs of skis and 4 pairs of poles on the rack on top, and we loaded in all of our equipment, and there was barely room for 2 adults and 2 kids, and off we went. On the day that we left Portland, it was snowing. So 2,200 miles in 4-wheel drive, headed east. I had a friend, actually an ex-friend, who had a brother who had a snowmobile that we could borrow. Same friend, ex-friend, had a father who had a cabin that we could stay in near Driggs, Idaho. So we were going east, and the Cascade snow was coming down in blobs, but once we got far enough east into the Rockies, the snow was wonderful, and it blew around, and it would actually blow off the roads, and we thought, this is living. Little did we know that they were closing the roads behind us because this was the biggest blizzard of the year. God help the clueless. So we get to the brother's house. He gives me a 5-minute lesson on how to run a snowmobile. And they put it in this trailer, which is as big as the Toyota that was pulling it. And off we head to find the father's cabin. And the landmark for the cabin were these 3 big blue harvest stores. A harvest store, I don't know, holds some stuff, silage or something like that. And we finally found them. And by this time, the blizzard was in full force. There were 4 feet of snow on the road to the cabin. And so I stashed Leah and Jason and Aaron, our 2 boys, in the farmer's house. And me, the intrepid explorer, got on the snowmobile and headed down the road about 100 yards before it sank. So I hopped off up to my crotch in the snow, and I horsed it around and went back on my track, got off, horsed it around again, ran another 100 yards, and that went on for about 45 minutes, by which time I am sweating like a pig and thinking, I could freeze to death out here. The cabin was nowhere in sight. I did find it. I found the cabin. And so went back, got the troops, everybody got to the cabin. We turned on the lights, we turned on the water, pipes were frozen. So we looked around to see what else was in the cabin. There were a lot of empty beer bottles, no full ones, unfortunately. There were some saltine crackers, and there was were some tea bags. That was it. We didn't have any food because there wasn't any room in the Toyota to put any food. There was just room for the people and the stuff. Okay, we got out the next day. We drove up to Grand Targhee, wonderful ski area, had a wonderful day. On our way home, Jason started throwing up. He was not feeling well. The only good thing about getting home was we found that the county had plowed the road up close to the cabin. We still had to use the snowmobile for the last 500 yards or so. So the next day, Leah volunteered to stay with Jason, and Aaron and I were going to ski across the Great Divide at Jackson Hole. I took Aaron down on the snowmobile to clean off the car. He drove the snowmobile back to get Leah so she could have it. And I'm looking there as they're coming down toward me, and I'm thinking, that's a really responsible 11-year-old. He's just going nice and slow. He gets to about 30 yards from the car, and he guns it. Leah jumps off, seeing the impending disaster, and boom, he crashes into the car with the snowmobile. Oh, God. Well, Leah had jumped off, so she was okay. Aaron is writhing around on the ground, holding his leg. Both vehicles are still drivable, so off Aaron and I go to the emergency room in Driggs, Idaho. The doctor examines him, declares he's all right. He jumps off the examining table, does a couple of deep squats. I could have killed him. Well, we went on over the divide to Jackson Hole. Now, at this time, Aaron was, at 11 years old, was a better skier than I. He's a great athlete, not great on judgment, great athlete. And I said, stay with me. Well, I fell on a steep slope, and while I was gathering my wits and my equipment to get it back on, Aaron takes off. I caught him at the end of the lift, pulled his pass, and said, we're going home. I mean, we can all agree that parenting is an unconditional joy, can't we? So we got back, and by this time, Leah had become best friends with the state police lady who talked about road conditions. We went to Yellowstone. We took a coach trip, one of these jobbers with treads and skis on the front, through the park, and it was indeed wonderful. It is just such a marvelous place, and you would see the bison and the geysers and all of that. And we went on up to Schweitzer in northern Idaho, had another wonderful ski time. And we were so used to seeing monochrome, that is black and white, that when we got back to Portland, it was as if it was a riot of color because there were some greenery and some other colors there sort of intermixed. A few things to know about this trip, and I didn't know this for years afterwards, but the reason Aaron crashed into the car is that he had seen the sheriff do a Brody on his snowmobile, and he was trying to replicate that. The only problem was that he was 80 pounds too light and 20 pounds too green. The other thing about that Toyota, that impossibly small Toyota, is that we kept it for about, 6 or 7 years, and every one of us, myself, Leah, Jason, and Aaron, did at least one unintended 360 in that car. Its rear end was in a bigger hurry than the front end. I did actually a 720. That was terrifying. The coda on all of this is that we finally got rid of that car, and we bought some road iron. This was a Dodge Ram Charger, big high-based four-wheel drive thing, and Aaron crashed that one too.
Thank you. Right before intermission, we're going to have music. Lynn Reardon. Lynn has enjoyed creating harp music, magic, for more than 30 years. She is a classically trained harpist, recording artist, singer, songwriter who enjoys many types of music, including Celtic, classical, new age, folk, and pop. In 2012, she moved to Oregon from California, where she performed and toured with the bands Electric Angel, Lumina, and Hearthfire. She's performed at many Southern Oregon venues, weddings, and private events. And please help me welcome Every Moment. And Lynn composed this song.
Thank you for the introduction. I composed this song some years ago for a friend of mine who was undergoing a health challenge. And it's about the power of now, as Eckhart Tolle's book says. The power of living in the present moment. And it's called Every Moment.
you. We'll now have about a 15-minute intermission, and we can maybe share some stories among ourselves about the art of living. Okay, thank you. See you back in 15 minutes or so. welcome back. So to start us off on the second half, Kayla Rao is going to always look on the bright side of life. Welcome.
When I was a teenager, I had the very great fortune to have two mentors, Bobby Kidder and Ed Gagne. Some of you might know them, who taught me that one of the great powers in life and in living and coping is laughter. So this song is in honor of that, although it's about something slightly different. And there is a whistling part, and my whistling is shoddy at best. So if you happen to know the song, please whistle along. I will do my best. But usually I kazoo that part, but I forgot my kazoo because I forget things these days. So please whistle along if you are so inclined and you happen to know it. Some things in life are bad. They can really make you mad. Other things just make you swear and curse. When you're chewing on life's gristle, don't grumble, give a whistle. And this'll help things turn out for the best. And always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the light side of life. Life seems just like a mess, and you've forgotten it goes to laugh and smile and dance and sing. When you're feeling in the dumps, silly chumps, just press your lips and whistle, that's the thing. And always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. This breaks in, it's the final word. You must always face the pageant with the bow. God can help you sin if the audience agrees. Enjoy it, it's your last chance anyhow. And always look on the bright side of death. Just before you try your terminal breath. Life's a piece of shit. You get it. Life's a laugh. That's a joke. It's true. You'll see it's all a show. Keep on laughing as you go. Just remember that the last laugh is on you. And always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the bright side of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. So our next storyteller, I think, deserves our thanks for a lot more than being a storyteller. And that's for Kate Campbell, because she's the one that really helps make the sound happen here, helps the music, making sure everybody does that well together, and just all around great support person for this. But Kate is a native Oregonian who was taught that education, the arts, and all of nature are worthy of worship. The world of music has been her work and playground for the last 40 years, 20 of which have been in Josephine County. Currently, she directs 3 choirs in the hopes that harmonious singing will bring inspiration and joy to the singers and peace and love to their audiences. A rural farm with wilderness nearby supplies the balance required for her mental and physical health. Art, music, and nature. Please help me welcome Kate.
In the year 2000, my father was about to turn 80, and we decided to have a party for him. This was not something my family usually did, but we decided to invite all his friends and rent the historic little Grange building with a dance floor and a kitchen and a dining room. And we said, Dad, let's get some live music, anything you want. And he said, I'd like big band music for my birthday party. Now, normally a big band music for an 80-year-old would be a perfectly wonderful choice, but I was a little flabbergasted because I had never heard him talk about or listen to big band music, ever. We grew up, all the kids, with classical music, little folk thrown in there, and this was new to me. I did not know my father loved big band music from his youth, and I had to kind of research what it was, first of all, and we found a big band, and they played in, this was outside of Corvallis, where I grew up, and it was a wonderful party. But it got me thinking about why did I go my entire life, I was about 45 at the time, without knowing that my father had this love for this other music. And there's only one answer, and that was my mother. She was the influence in our lives, and she was definitely the influence for my musical upbringing. So I thought, did I really do all of that music making and taking all those piano lessons and getting degrees because she thought that classical music was all there was? Or was there something else in it for me? Because there were a few times when I was sitting in those practice rooms they're about the size of a closet, and they have all the world's worst pianos in there, and you're practicing and trying to make yourself sound good, and I thought, okay, now why am I doing this? Those were my young years. And I started thinking, after my father's revelatory birthday party, that maybe I should look at what had influenced me and why I was doing what I was doing. And I started thinking about my mother. This is really the story about her. So she grew up in Troutdale, Oregon, on a beautiful piece of land, back when Troutdale was a little blip and there was a lot of wildness up there. They lived, she and her two sisters and her parents lived on a beautiful farm that had woods that went down to the Sandy River. And she learned to be in nature. She was probably what we would call today an introvert. And she spent a lot of time in the woods, sitting in the trees, watching everything below. And she had a wonderful imagination. And I know this because she told us stories of that. And as she grew, she studied piano and went off to junior college in Portland. And her love of nature and music and art all came together when she learned how to be a campfire girl leader. So campfire was the alternate to Girl Scouts. I don't know if anybody remembers campfire girls, but they were a big thing back then. And she was this incredible campfire leader, and she would take groups of girls out and teach them the skills to be in the outdoors. And we learned how to tie knots and look at the stars and read a map and hike and camp and hike more. And she was she was a force of nature, really. She was a very wonderful organizer, one of the reasons why that birthday party went so well. And she loved to sing. She loved to teach singing. She loved to have everybody in the room sing. So all the campfire girls had to sing the songs that came from that Campfire Girls songbook. It was like the Bible. It was everything, all the songs that we knew, we would sing on long car trips, and they were not classical. They were like folk music. Some of them were from Italy or Czechoslovakia, or they were in Spanish. So they were really wonderful songs, and my mother, she allowed that kind of stuff, so that was okay. And in our teen years, I remember my brother and sister, older, bringing home LPs of James Taylor and Joan Baez singing Bob Dylan songs, and Judy Collins. And my mom thought those were fine. They were beautiful singers, they were fine. But classical music was what we heard when I was a kid. So my mother would play the piano while we were going to sleep, and I would hear Brahms and Chopin and Schumann. And in my later years, when I finally got good enough to play some of those songs, I would tread very carefully into learning the Brahms A-flat major waltz or a Chopin nocturne, and it was like treading on sacred ground. It was a little scary, but I was good enough to do those things. And my mother was always encouraging of any of us who wanted to do art or music. My brother went into the visual arts, and I wanted to be an artist also. I wanted to draw, I wanted to sculpt. And in high school, I lost my piano teacher. So we all had to take piano lessons from day one. 3 older siblings ahead of me quit piano, and I was begging for piano lessons. So by the time I was good enough to, I lost my train of thought, so I'm not sure where I'm going. So I'll just keep going. So the encouragement for the arts, I mean, sometimes I wonder if I had really expressed an interest in real estate or civil engineering, would she have been so encouraging? And she was so strongly opinionated about music and art that I don't think so. I just don't think so. But she encouraged me. She got me watercolor lessons in between 5th and 6th grade, which I adored. I loved it. And in high school, I lost my piano teacher. I got my train back. So I stopped studying piano, and I decided to be an artist. And so I trotted off to college after a little break after high school. And I didn't want to go anywhere to college, so I just went to the local college, which was OSU. And their art department was the size of a pea. They're an agriculture and forestry college. So I tried a few semesters in art and finally ended up switching to music because their department had more money and they were able to put together quite a good music program. And their choral program had been amazing for since the beginning. So I felt that I was on the right track in terms of loving music and loving classical music, but that piano teacher that I had that was different from my siblings taught me little jazz songs and other little boogie-woogie tunes, and I was afraid, actually, of practicing those in front of my mother, but she was okay. She liked that teacher. So I went off to college in San Francisco and finished my music degree, and started back in Oregon. I was so homesick. I came back from California and started out in Portland, taught piano there, ran into my choir buddies, joined choirs, and then was asked to direct choirs. And what I realized is that all of that music that was introduced to me and that my mother and I listened to together was something that I loved. I loved Rachmaninoff's Vespers. I mean, she and I would listen to them and we would cry at the same time. So I wasn't doing, I was doing it for her. I always wanted her to approve of what I was doing. And she did, well, except when I practiced ragtime. She didn't like ragtime. But as years went by, and I got more into my career as a musician, composing and arranging and directing choirs and teaching piano. And I learned late in life to enjoy singing. I always sang, but I was a very shy singer, and I'm a shy speaker. So this is my first storytelling event, except for the one out in Cave Junction. So This, it is a wonderful opportunity. So after my dad's birthday, I made him tapes of big band music that he could listen to in his truck and not bother my mom with that music. He died 2 years after that party, and my mother lived for another 17 years and traveled, learned how to watercolor with her journals that she took with her traveling, and collected art and fabrics and jewelry that was all handmade. She loved indigenous works and admired people who did things with their hands. And she would have loved the organization that we're supporting tonight. In May of 2019, so 2019, in the springtime, here in Southern Oregon, at my house, I noticed crowds of swallows flying around my house. And I'm going to bring in a little bit that I wanted to tell you when we went on those long car trips and sang. We also played little guessing games and riddle games, and we said, okay, if you could be any animal, what would you be? And of course, I always wanted to be a horse. But it was also about birds. Okay, if you could be a bird, what would you be? And of course, I always wanted to be a wood duck because it was colorful and could swim and fly. Important. But my mother always said she wanted to be a swallow. She wanted to be a swallow because they were so graceful and so airborne. So here, spring 2019, my mother was very elderly. She was 96 and had dementia. We were taking care of her in the farmhouse that I grew up in. And here were all these swallows around my house, and they were not the tree swallows that we have a lot of. They were not barn swallows, which I grew up with. They were cliff swallows, the kind that build mud nests that look like gourds built out of little daubs of mud and stuck up on the eaves. And they are so graceful, they never touch the ground. They grab their mud and they build these nests, and these swallows were building nests on all four sides of my house. So every direction had nests on it. I didn't know where they'd come from. I've never seen them before. So these swallow families were having babies, and there was a nest right outside my bedroom window. And if the window was open in the morning, I could hear the little swallows talking to each other very quietly. And just before the babies were about to fledge, I was called back to my farm to take care of my mom. She was on at the end. And so we took turns taking care of her, watching as she declined, and we had shifts through the night that we would sit with her. So she had stopped being responsive, as they say, and it was my turn to sit with her from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. And the morning of June 5th, I got up and relieved my sister. She went to bed. I sat with my mother. It was very, very quiet. And I thought about all those times that we listened to things together. And this time, I was listening to her. I was sitting very close to where she was breathing and listening to her breath, slow and slow and slow. And it was like a retardando of this beautiful masterpiece that was coming to an end. And I listened to her last breath. And a few days later, after everything was over, we had cremated her, I went back home, and all the swallows were gone. They were all gone. All the babies had left. They'd all flown to wherever swallows go, and all I could think was that they took my mother with them. Thank you.
next storyteller is Charles Utley, and Charles was born in Pensacola, Florida, and as a child he moved to Mississippi. After his parents' divorce, he headed west. He started out hitchhiking and learned how to ride the rails. And in 1983, he arrived in Grants Pass on a freight train. He didn't stay put for long, and Charles spent some time in Los Angeles, but eventually heard Oregon calling him back, and he returned to Grants Pass in 2008. Please help me welcome Charles, no longer trapped.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank Tom and all the people from Mint for inviting me to come down and share a little bit with you guys. I'm very grateful for that. Oh Lord, let's see here, 10 minutes. Let's see here. Yeah, I came through Grants Pass a long time ago. We'll get to that. I was born in 1959 in Pensacola, Florida, unfortunately to an alcoholic father. And a mother who had 5 children. I was the oldest of 5. We didn't have much money. Mom, of course, was a single mom, and really might as well have been because Dad was never there. She did everything she could to try to raise us as best she could. And being in the Deep South, things aren't practiced quite the way they are out here on the West Coast, law-wise, so very early I found myself from having just ran away from home to get away from the abuse of my dad. I was pulled in by the so-called truancy officers, or whatever you want to call them, and they decided to shove me into family court. So I got a real inside look into what my life was going to be like for quite a spell. And you know, along with the trauma, you know, you can't do good in school when you can't sleep at night. So you know, that had its downfalls too. So as a very, very early child, I lived from a fear-based existence from the trauma of those types of, you know, from that trauma. And I didn't get to deal with that till many, many years later. But where it took me was to a lot of those dark places that you read about, because I had alcoholism was a part of our family genes. You know, my folks grew, you know, lived in the woods, made moonshine like y'all know about out here. And, you know, we picked up bad traits. You know, Dad packed a gun all the time, Mama packed a gun till she died too. So, you know, you learn to drive from the Gulf Coast to Tennessee without ever touching the highway. Not good things for a kid to want to learn. Anyway, I only got 10 minutes, I better get there. So, you know, I mean, I could go on, but so, you know, I ended up running away from home. I was in Gulfport, Mississippi by the time this all went down. My mom and dad separated when I was 12. I was 6 foot tall at 12, wasn't good. And you know, overheard my dad one day out Pop's Ferry restaurant back on Back Bay, Biloxi. I'm over there fishing and I hear the dude jacking and I heard somebody say, you know, Charles, they serve booze 24 hours a day in the French Quarter. I'm like, oh my God, that forward idea, better light bulb went off in my head, and I seen a sign said 62 miles, New Orleans. And, you know, after that, all I know is I ended up in the French Quarter, and you couldn't keep me out of there. So, you know, I'd come back home, they put me back in school in Harrison County, Gulfport, and I'd get kicked out of there because my mind is way, way somewhere else, you know. Took me from Gulfport to Biloxi, put me in school there. I got in a fight the first day, boom, I'm out of there. You know, I wasn't there. Trauma had ruined me already. All I could think about was being over there where that comfort zone was, even though it was completely unreal to, I mean, completely distant from anything I'd ever seen. All I knew about was walking in the swamp, swimming with the alligators or the dolphins at the coast or whatever, but here I go. So long story short, that led from being there to New Orleans to learning the street life, how to make quick money on the street. And not a good thing for a kid, you know. So I ended up going and doing a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have done. I wasn't a violent offender. I knew how to street hustle and how to make money and try to make you just as happy as I could and get your money. And that went on, but alcoholism, it kept getting me in trouble no matter what. So from there, I went from being in family court to juvenile correctional facilities, foster homes, all that stuff. None of that worked. Then I went to the baby penitentiary, Oakley Training School. You can read about it in Mississippi. And then at 16, I was certified as an adult. Because we was in Oakley Training School, I was a minimum security inmate. I always did just minimum stuff, you know, car burglary or something like that. I wasn't a violent offender. I didn't believe in shooting guns or robbing people or beating people up, really, unless you got in my face. And then, and I was a big boy. I weighed like 240 in my big days, you know, and I had no fat. And so, anyway, long story short, you know, I was caught in that whole cycle of recidivism. It was not good. It was not good. And so where was I? I got lost in the shuffle. But, you know, that continued on. It continued on. On the streets of San Francisco in the 80s, I was there on the streets one more time. You know, rock star with no guitar. Here I am, you know, on the corner out there selling my soul for nothing, you know, for another day of looking for love in all the wrong places. And this guy that was a street vendor there on the corner by Frenchie's bookstore on Turk and Leavenworth used to tell us kids, you know, who Vice was, who we thought Vice was, who was undercover, who may be a serial killer, all that stuff, because we were working the streets, and he was looking out for us. And one day he says, please do not go to the bathhouses. I'm like, what? I've never been to one, but why? And he says, everybody's dying. I'm like, what do you mean everybody's dying? He said, they've got some kind of disease, they're all dying. They call it GRID. I said, what's that? He said, gay-related immune deficiency. I'm like, wow, bro, no, I don't go there. So that was my introduction to first hearing it about HIV. And I knew a lot of street people that were looking pretty sick and dying, you know. I didn't put it all together then until many years later I found out that I was HIV positive. And that was in 1996. But you know, I was on the streets doing all that street life stuff, and recidivism couldn't get me nowhere. So in 1996, on another one of those runs, oh, by the way, when I was incarcerated, I missed out in Oakley Training School. You left me. I left myself. Oakley Training School. We were there at a minimum security inmate work camp where we planted trees. We got visitation one day, and one of these guys brought some reefer in. And Papa Childs, the black man that ran our camp, says, if y'all don't tell us who brought that reefer in, I'm taking you all back to Oakley Training School tomorrow morning. Well, that wasn't a good thing to tell me and my two buddies. So we got in his car that night after we scaled the fence, and we went across Lake Pontchartrain into New Orleans that next morning when the sun was coming across there. We got arrested the same day. But so they shipped me off to the Mississippi State Penitentiary at 16 years old with 5 years. And, you know, you would think that pulling the cotton sack in the field, singing sweet songs of freedom with people that were still locked up from the Selma, Birmingham riots, and the sweet songs of freedom were what kept me going. Still does today, because I reflect upon those days now that I have my life together. But you know, I got out of there. They didn't teach you anything about alcoholism and trauma or anything like that, because to you were money. You know, there was a 2% chance that I was supposed to stay out of that place because recidivism rate was so high because of the way the system was set up. Even as a child, when I got out of that first family court visit, I went downtown to where I knew my mama was at, to the pawn shop where my aunt worked, and they arrested me for vagrancy just because I had no money in my pocket. And they knew I was a poor kid from a poor side of town, going back to that. But anyway, I got sober many years later out of Hollywood. This is one of the main reasons I do what I do. As a homeless outreach worker, wouldn't leave me alone. This little cute chick, she just wouldn't leave me alone. Charles, you can do better, you can do better. And I'd always had all these nudges from judges and courts and detoxes and treatment centers and all this other stuff, laying on of hands and everything, you name it. It didn't matter, I wasn't ready. I didn't get it, you know. And that lady, I told her, I said, you know, Nancy, I'll call you if I get ready. I was there, and it was during the LA riots. I was there home with Santa Monica and Curson, sleeping in an abandoned house behind the gas station there in West Hollywood, and the riots happened. As soon as the riots were over with and the smoke cleared and I could literally get some help, I got off the streets. I went in West Hollywood homeless shelter, went to San Fernando Valley, and got sober in Tarzana Treatment Center on Oxnard Street. One of the first people I met at my first meeting was Danny Trejo from Machete. He had 25 years at the time. I got to sit and kick it with him for lots of meetings. And I got involved heavily in recovery. And in that treatment center, I met a beautiful lady, Puerto Rican lady by the name of Esther DeMota from the Bronx of New York, little 5-foot-tall firecracker. And little did we know that after we spent a few years together, she would be diagnosed with cancer. And, took the wind out of my sails. And, she died in my arms. It was aggressive shit. And she volunteered all those days. We worked and did our very best to try to help people. We ran sober meetings of Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, and we worked with the people that are less fortunate, HIV people, anybody in the San Fernando Valley we possibly could, to try to help make things better for that next person. And because I knew what it was like to be out there pushing a shopping cart. There are so many episodes I could tell you for years, stories of what happened in and out, and live in different cities pushing shopping carts and hoping to make it out someday. And, and in those up and down days, I may have lost what I earned, but I didn't lose what I learned. So it's carried me this far to know that participation in doing outreach and working with the homeless, which is what I've been doing since I came up from LA. I got sober there. I got married out of treatment. She died. But I met a beautiful lady named Beverly Armstrong, who was my nurse. But we became good friends after that, and eventually it became buddies, and we're still best friends today. And she's helped me more than just about anybody has. And it's all about working in the HIV thing. I participated in, I think, 12 AIDS walks in Los Angeles, raised money to help, raise awareness for the cause. And Beverly, my best friend, was an HIV specialist, so I had the top-notch doctors, top-notch everything. And, luckily I'm still living and healthy as I could. I'm healthier now than I was 40 years ago. So it's thanks to a loving God, and working with others, because God comes through the people. We don't get out and get in touch with the people. I don't have those self-seeking motives or living in that trauma no more, That's all gone. But it still takes a daily work, But I'm just grateful. I mean, I don't know where to end it, but, I'm grateful for what I do. I love working with Mint, and there's so many people in the community that I know. I want to thank all of you who came out this evening to support me. And, my message is just keep on doing what we got to do. The world needs love right now more than anything. Heal the nation, trauma nation, TikTok says the clock's what I say all the time. It's just sad. And I love doing what I'm doing. I love the people, all of them out there. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to do my very best to try to help them because it helps me in return, I think that's what my God would want me to do. So I'm leaving it at that. My mom would want me to do that, that's for sure, Yeah.
Thank you, Charles. Our last storyteller of the evening is Michael Franklin, and he resides with his family in Takelma in the Illinois River, where after a decade of traveling the U.S. in a converted school bus, they found their people and their home. Michael and his wife, Angela, co-founded Journey Home Support Services, which is an organization in Josephine County offering peer support, grief companioning, death midwifery, and other fun things. Please help me welcome Michael. His presentation is going to be Skin, Bones, and Mixed Media.
We've been supposed to have met many times now, so it's nice to meet you. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael. I actually don't really like that way of introducing myself. I think it's the most American use of English to say, I am Michael, and expect that to mean something. I like the way the Brits say it. I'm called Michael. It sounds very smug. I like that. I'm called Michael. I don't know a lot about Presbyterians, but I think I learned two things tonight. One, judging by the banners and such on the wall, they have big hearts. And two, judging by the pews, they have very small knees. Or they have very large bladders, because I don't know if I could. I was raised in the church, and I guess I was smaller then, but Speaking of being raised in the church, I do want to thank Kayla for the song, Always Look on the Bright Side. There you are, yeah. That was actually my friend Freddie Duber, who died in a car accident with 7 of my other friends. They all died in one accident. He was the singer of a punk band for about 20 years called Zero Tolerance Task Force, and he was insane, and he lived on dry pistachio pudding packets, and he always had adult magazines in his back pocket. I didn't say he was a good guy, but he was my friend. And his funeral, the only thing that he wanted, and he talked about this often, was for everybody to sing that song, and we did. Everybody sang that song. So when I get to whistle that song, it makes me happy. And the fact that you said the S word on stage at church took all of the heat off of me, so when God sends lightning bolts, it's not coming at me this time. Thank you very much, Kayla. So I know it's against the rules, but I was inspired by this quote, and I just read it tonight, actually. I chose the name for tonight's talk when Hyla asked me to speak, and she asked me for a name, and I actually didn't know what I was going to talk about at all, but I've been in many bands, and I know that if you come up with a good band name, you're going to have an okay band. So I came up with a really good name for the talk, The Art of Living Skin, Bones, and Mixed Media. That's cool. And Angela's like, what are you going to talk about? I have no idea. I really didn't know I had a lot of ideas for stories. There's a lot of stories I have in my life that pertain to this because I've been an artist, which is kind of like saying you're a Buddhist or a Christian or anything else. It's just this weird label that we put on this thing that we think we're doing when really all we're trying to become is art, or trying to become the Buddha, or trying to become the Christ. Because if you're not doing that, then you're not really an artist or a Buddhist or a Christian or any of those other things, right? If you're not actively working to become that thing. So the art of living is actually redundant, because living is the art. It's the process. If you talk to any artist, they're not going to be excited about the art that they make. They're going to be excited about the way they make it. I never hear an artist talk about their paintings. I always hear them talk about painting, right? And I like that. Like when you go to a museum and you see the name card, right? The museum card at the bottom, and it says the name of the painting or the sculpture, and it says the name of the artist, and sometimes it says the date, but it always says what it's made of. It always tells you, as if you could look at a Georgia O'Keeffe and see just watercolor on paper or oil on canvas and just make sense of that in your mind. This is just a bunch of oil and pigment on a piece of cotton. No, this is a Georgia O'Keeffe. This is different. Like you could pick up a book and you could say this is just ink on paper, or you could say this is a bell hooks book, right? There's something different than what we're made of and what we are. When I say I am Michael, it doesn't tell you what I'm made of. So my placard's going to read skin, bones, and mixed media, and I'll tell you why. When I was a child, it was clear to me that life was not worth living if we did not know love. I wish I could testify that I came to this awareness because of the love I felt in my life. But it was love's absence that let me know how much love mattered. At the moment of my birth, I was looked upon with loving kindness, cherished and made to feel wanted on this earth and in my home. And to this day, I cannot remember when that feeling of being loved left me. So, we'll get started. But I want to, since we're in church, I want to start with a prayer. Is that okay? So my pastor told me this once, there's two kinds of prayers, right? There's the prayer that makes God second most happy is when we're silent and we just listen to God. That's the makes him second most happy. I said, well, what's the best kind of prayer? And he said, well, the one that God gives me what I ask for. So just breathe in through the nose. And breathe out. You know, the Latin word for breath is spiritus. It's the word we get spirit from. So right now we're actively engaging with spirit. Breathe in and breathe out. From humble beginnings to a most humbling end, I have lived my life extraordinary. Allowing all of the breath that moves through me be the same breath given by kings past and taken by children unborn. It is breath not mine, but borrowed from God. And I will give it back, exhaled heavenly, with my mouth wrapped in a kiss to all I have loved. Can I get an amen? I've always wanted to do that. Yeah! I told you I'd do something with my life. So in 2016, I decided that I needed to become a death midwife. And because I was raised in the West, I thought that meant I needed to go to a special school to learn things to do that. I didn't realize that's what life is. This is the curriculum. But I sought out a school to learn how to work with people that are dying, the thing we've always done forever, dying and borning. Those are the two things that apparently need midwives who apparently need certifications. So I found this teacher, Olivia Barham. She's amazing. She's one of my close friends to this day, and she's one of my favorite teachers I've ever had. I flew down to, I didn't fly that time, but I went, whatever, this is a story. I flew down, I flapped my arms. I flew down to Los Angeles and I went to Pacific Palisades and I sat in this house and I learned from this teacher. And it was actually the first time I remember sitting at the feet of my teacher. I sat at her feet for 3 days and I absorbed everything that she had to give. And it was amazing. And one of the things that she had to give was she didn't do all the teaching. She brought in other teachers. And I thought that's brilliant and amazing and cost effective. And one of the teachers she brought in was a ancestral meditation teacher. And she took us through my first ever ancestral meditation. And this will just be a moment. An ancestral meditation, if you don't know, is when you go into a meditative state and you actually communicate with your ancestors, right? You learn through your own body, your own skin, your own bones, and your own blood who you are and where you come from. So we sit, we close our eyes, and we breathe. And this teacher, she walks around and she reminds you that everything that you are is made of something that has come from before. And she asks you to meditate upon your parents and then choose a parent. I chose my mother, and for reasons I didn't know at that time, I did not choose my father's lineage. I didn't know why, but I didn't. And I could tell you that another Hearth, maybe. But then she says, picture your mother's lineage. So I see my grandparents, and that's as far back as I can go. She says, picture your great-grandparents. I've never seen them. But she said, just breathe. And there they were, this lovely Welsh couple. She said, picture their parents. And I breathed. And there they were. She said, picture their parents. And this goes on and on. And we're breathing with every breath. We're seeing another link in the chain that takes us all the way back. And I'm just filled with all of this feeling of love coming from behind me, like every one of these people is sending love right down the line. She says, now turn and face them. So I turned around and lined up behind me, as far as I could see, was all of these people. All of these faces. And they're leaning over each other, and they're all crowding in, and they're looking like they're just in love, like the most love you've ever felt for something, and they're looking at me. And I've never felt what it is to be adored. Like a baby in an incubator as everyone's staring at that child, and for some reason, I'm flooded with the feeling and the memory of what this is. They're all adoring me. When I was born, my umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck, and I couldn't breathe, and I came out of the womb through my mother's belly. I was taken out cesarean, and so a lot of violence took place in my birth, and I was dead, and I wasn't breathing. They had to revive me, and my lungs didn't work. I could not breathe. They hooked me up to something that helped me breathe for a long time, and I sat in this little thing, and everybody that looked at me from out there, and they probably adored me, but they probably felt pity or doubt. And I never felt the feeling of just being loved for who I am. And then I see them, right? I see them as they're looking at me, and from the back of the line, they start passing a parcel, which is a British word for package, right? So they're passing the parcel, and as it comes through the line, each one of them puts something in it. So a lady pulls a little bit of her eyelashes out, and she sprinkles it in. Another man spits into the box. A woman takes a lock of her hair. Somebody pricks their finger, and a little bit of blood goes in. Right? Somebody whispers something into the box, and they're passing it forward down the line to me. They're giving me this gift that is me. I learned this. And it gets to this one particular man, and he's a bridge builder. And I don't know how I know this, but all of this is in my head anyway, so believe me, I knew it. I knew he was a bridge builder. I looked at him. He looked like Mario from Mario Brothers. He had a little mustache and a little hat and some overalls and these pudgy little sausage fingers that were so damaged from all of the work that he does, he couldn't make a fist, right? Couldn't close his hands all the way. I knew what he did. I knew he built bridges. And he gets knocked on the shoulder, and somebody's like, hey, hey. And he takes the package, and he looks around, and he's a little embarrassed. You can tell he doesn't have anything to give. He doesn't have a coin in his pocket to put in to pass me wealth, and he doesn't have a story to tell me because he doesn't remember much, and he doesn't have anything. He's balding, and he doesn't feel like he has anything, and then he remembers, and it hits him, and he opens the box, and he sings a song. And this is particularly poignant to me because I grew up in a household where nobody played music, and that's all I wanted to do with my life. Nobody sang songs, and that's all I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be on this stage singing songs with you, but I didn't have any modeling for that. I didn't think that that was a part of who I was. I thought that I was the name of the painting, not the thing the painting was made of, right? So he sang me the song, and he passes the box forward, and it comes to me, and then she says, breathe in and let it go. And like a smoke from an old cigarette, they just kind of dissipated away, and I felt that feeling of grieving for the loss of something that's still here. In the death world, we call that anticipatory grief. When you know that something's going to go away, but it's not away yet, so you spend your time grieving it while it's still in front of you. But it's different because I was actually grieving for what's always been inside of me, and I never knew. It's a little different. It's like the opposite of anticipation. No Rocky Horror fans? So tonight, to end this, I know we're probably at the end of time, I thought maybe we could take that gift that's been given to all of us if you have a voice. It's the gift of singing. and community. We could sing together. That happens in this church, right? People sing in this church, don't they? They get the spirit. So there's a song that I've seen on the internet a few times to follow the suit of Georgia. You all know what the internet is, right? Yellowpages.com. But there's this young boy who sings this song, and he sings it with all of his being, all of his heart, and so much love and joy that it's infectious. And I thought maybe we could sing it together. I'll start it, I'll sing it through once, and then you can join in. It's very simple. But it's about the gifts we've been given. It's about the skin, the bones, and the mixed media that make up who we are. And just the main thing is gratitude, right? Because you might not be happy to be at a funeral, but you have gratitude to be there, and that's what lets me know that it's something that's really special. It follows us even to the worst of our days. So the song goes, thank you for sunshine, thank you for rain, thank you for joy, thank you for pain. It's a beautiful day, it's a beautiful day. Thank you for sunshine, thank you for rain, thank you for joy, thank you for pain. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. One more time. Thank you for sunshine, thank you for rain, thank you for joy, thank you for pain. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. Can I get an amen?
Thank you, Michael. To finish out the evening, Lynn Reardon, Give Yourself to Love by Kate Wolf. Thank you.
Charles and Michael talked so beautifully about love. I didn't know I'd get to follow. Wow. And anybody familiar with Kate Wolf? Big folk singer from the 80s? Yeah. This is her favorite song of mine. And if you know this, please sing along. If you don't know it, you'll probably pick up the chorus and you can sing along anyway. Kind friends all gathered round, there's something I would say, that what brings us together here has blessed us all today.
Thank you so much. You know, this was such an evening, and some of the notes that I made is about the evening is letting go of our fears, living our stories through books, the power of the joy, or living has its joys and challenges, the power of the present, laughter, looking on the bright side, the love of outdoors, art, music, never giving up, and one person in our lives can make a difference. Living is an art, and practicing gratitude. Our next Hearth is going to be on July 18th. It's going to be Cars We Have Known, so I can maybe tell a few stories about that one, I think. Probably that could go on all night. So thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you to our storytellers. Thank you to our musicians about the art of living. And I encourage you all just to go out and encourage the art of living. Thank you.